Hello and welcome to Retail Management BUS302, our Week 7 Lecture 3 video. This week we are talking about merchandise management. And up to this point, we've really looked at the merchandise management control systems, trying to figure out how much inventory we should have, some evaluation techniques and things like that. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the types of merchandise that we can have. And, some things that are out there obviously are going to be some national brands. These are also called manufacturers brands, right? Where you have Kellogg's and then the various sub brands, Raisin Bran and Apple Jacks, right? And everything else. So this is one thing that you can do. You can carry national brands like this, or you can do a store brand. Sometimes these are also called private label or house or your own brands. You can have a premium store brand or an exclusive brand, some of those things. And this would be an alternative, obviously, to a Reese's peanut cup, butter cup, like, here, Trader Joe, some milk chocolate, peanut butter cups. So as you're looking at that, these are some things that you would want to think about. Do you want to carry just national brands or store brands? Now, you could also go with a generic brand, and then a generic brand is really the no-frill product at an extreme discount price. And other than prescription drugs, generics are really declining. Now, I remember generics back in the 70s and 80s, where they were basically a white box or white packaging with a black, band or something. And, it was like a white bag with potato chips type of thing. So what's happened with generics instead, we've now moved more to the private label brands is what you've seen. So kind of a change that way. But, these are some alternatives that you have to carrying brands. And these types of either generics or private labels tend to give you a better general gross margin in the retail area. So it's something you want to think about. Right. So as you're going back, do you want to do store brands or national brands? You might want to remember, store brands can, enhance or expand your assortment. It might give you a little bit, it might give your company a little bit better prestige, make you look a little better. You can add different price tiers. These tend to be, as far as profitability, right, they can be expensive to design on the front end, but long term, these can actually be very profitable. So, and depending on, it might give you more freedom as well, because depending on what you're talking about, some really strong national brands actually tell you how you're going to be displaying their merchandise, how to advertise it and price it. So having your own brand, a store brand, can really help free up and give you some flexibility in certain areas, right? So one of the things Walgreens does is it places copycat brands like their adhesive bandages next to the Band-Aids. So this is an example of a copycat brand that Walgreens uses. So as you're thinking about your merchandise assortment, this is going to be one of those things that you're going to think about. Do you want to use national brands, store brands, copycat brands, those kind of things, right? Now, as you're looking at buying national brands, the way this really works, right? So if you're going to do a national brand, you're going to meet with the vendors, probably either at a wholesale market or they have trade shows, kind of those things. And you're going to send your buyers to meet with these vendors during the trade shows or their market weeks. You might ask for some samples to be samples to be sent to your stores before you place the full order, right? So there's a lot of different things. Now, there's different, again, trade shows. They've got the, Consumer Electronics Show. They've got toy shows. They've got all sorts of things out there. But if you're going to use national brands, that's normally what you do. When you're going to develop your own store brand, right, you could have your own operate your own manufacturing facilities, something like Costco does. Something that national retailers will do is they might work with a specific vendor and say, hey, if you make a couple of changes here and there, a manufacturer, if you did this and that, then would you put our label on it instead of your label? And that is another way that you can get into the private brand, is to work with national vendors. If they have additional manufacturing space, they might do that for you. So that would be something. So you can either operate your own facilities or maybe, work with a national supplier. Um, as far as sourcing, where do you get the merchandise, especially at the store brand? It's a there's global resources out there, right? So one of the things that you may want to do is look overseas and start thinking, okay, if I source this, I can source from China or Korea or India or wherever, right? You might run into lower labor costs, so it would cost you less. Depending on how currency fluctuations are, that might save you some money. Although there could be tariffs or duties. And one of the things, though, and the other thing that you're really going to have to plan on is it's going to take longer to get your products here, and transportation costs could really could eat into a lot of your profits. Now, as far as the uncertain lead times, in 2022, the Suez Canal was clogged because a cargo ship got stuck, right? And so these are reasons that you might have longer lead times and things like that, or who knows, a pandemic, right? So you have to be aware of these things when you're sourcing products and things like that, right? Especially if you're going to develop your own merchandise. Now, some of the things that might come up and some of the other issues that might pop up when you're developing your own merchandise would be the quality control. Then, if you're sourcing from a country that has child labor, then you get into some political issues, right? So to help get around those or help you manage those, some companies will set up buying offices overseas, and those companies then will manage the buying process and work with the vendors as they are in a global area, just to make sure things are kept to a certain standard and everything else, to avoid some political fallout. The other thing that you can do is you can sometimes obtain private label merchandise using a reverse auction. This is where the company provides specific specifications. They say, hey, this is what we want. And then vendors will bid on the opportunity to develop and make that product, right? So then the retailer selects from the bids. You don't have to go with the lowest bid, actually, and you could might find a vendor that is really high quality that just has some extra manufacturing time that they're wanting to use up. So you might get a real high quality manufacturer in doing something like that. So this would be another way to find a vendor for your store brand. So as you're thinking about brands, these are some things to think about. This brings us to the end of lecture 3, and we will conclude our week 7 lecture with lecture 4, which is the next video.